Investigators are looking for this man in this video. They think he's the one who tried to set up a bomb in New York's Times Square this weekend. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano joined us earlier.
I would caution, however, against prematurely jumping to the conclusion that this must be the person who did it. It's certainly a person who was in the area who would want to be interviewed, but other leads need to be pursued and are being pursued as well. There are lots of avenues of inquiry that need to be pursued here: the vehicle, the type of explosive device that was used, all of those sorts of things. So, I think the key thing to keep in mind is that we're now at the beginning of the investigatory process, not the end.
Okay, and joining us here at the beginning of the investigatory process is New York Republican Congressman Peter King. Congressman, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I know they give you guys briefings and stuff you can't tell us, but what can you tell us about who this guy is? Is there any sort of foreign connection? Do we know that for sure yet?
From what I understand, and we've been talking to people, our contacts overseas and in Washington, that there does not appear to be any foreign connection. There was no intelligence chatter before. There's been no conversation since indicating that this was coordinated from overseas. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not al-Qaeda affiliated here. So I think everything has to be left on the table. But as far as the foreign connection, there does not appear to be one right now.
Mm-hmm. Congressman, what do you know about this purported phone call from a nearby payphone on West 53rd, which would have been a couple blocks up from where the incident happened on 45th Street, later that night, later Saturday night? That said, somebody on the call said that this attack was just a diversion for a bigger event that was going to happen. It was discounted yesterday by the police commissioner, Ray Kelly, but have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, again, my understanding is that, they're still not even certain if the call were made, and if it were made, it would not necessarily be important because people always try to claim credit or get themselves into the picture or into the action. Having said that, that's what the police were very concerned about, that this bomb itself could have just been something a sucker was in. You could have the secondary bomb. As we've seen in London, sometimes you have an attack like this on one night and then an attack somewhere else the next day. So all of these things are looked into, have to be investigated thoroughly. The phone call itself, in and of itself, is not conclusive.
It's just amazing, too, is that I know things are tight and everyone's got to do with less. But if you're going to be cutting the budget anywhere, I would think that the terrorism budget that goes to New York would be something you wouldn't touch, especially with a powerful congressman like you and Senator Schumer so close to the president. They're giving us a lot less money now.
Brian, Commissioner Kelly has set up a Secure the Cities program because we are unfortunately, we're almost convinced that the next attack against Manhattan, against the city itself, is going to come from the outer boroughs or the suburbs because it's much harder for the police to detect action out there. And that's why this Secure the Cities program would detect radiation on all the bridges, tunnels, highways coming into Manhattan. This year, the Obama administration has eliminated all funding for that. We need at least $20 million to keep that program going. The Obama administration has put zero in the budget. I'm fighting as hard as I can. I've got legislation through the House, but we got to keep the fight up.
Right.
We're back with New York Congressman Peter King. Peter, before we move on to the next topic, I just wanted to get your thoughts. In light of this attempted terror attack Saturday night, what are your thoughts with regard to the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed trial still being considered for New York City?
This is absolutely disgraceful. This trial should be taken out of New York. It should be announced immediately. What the Attorney General Eric Holder is doing, he's just really fighting here for a left-wing ideology. The fact is this trial does not belong in New York. It belongs in a military tribunal. The president has got to show that he's the president. You can't allow the Attorney General to be defying the president of the United States. It's just wrong.
And not only that, he's not making a decision. I mean, the Attorney General is just sitting on it. He has no answer.
Take your time.
Well, all right, calls this morning for more Homeland Security funding following the bomb square in Times Square. Congressman Peter King, the ranking member on the Homeland Security Committee, joins us from Long Island. Congressman King, thank you so much for being here. Obviously, we lucked out this time.
Yeah, Rosanna, we did. But the fact is, New York City, particularly Manhattan, is the #1 terrorist target in the world. Commissioner Kelly has set up an elaborate program of defenses. We have 1,000 police officers working on counterterrorism. But the fact is we need more. Commissioner Kelly, our worry is, our real fear is that the next attack, which is almost proven on Saturday night, whether or not that's a terrorist attack, it shows, though, that the next attack will be, we believe, come from the suburbs or the outer boroughs into Manhattan. along the bridges, the tunnels, the highways. So Commissioner Kelly has set up a Secure the Cities program, which would have radiation detectors all along those routes to ensure that dirty bombs or radioactive materials cannot be brought into the city. And yet this year, the Obama administration has cut off all the funding for that. We need at least $20 million to keep that program going, and the administration has taken every penny away from that program for this year. So I'm fighting as hard as I can. I'm fighting in the House. I've gotten legislation through the House, but we have to get it through the House and the Senate. We have to get the money available. This is not a gift to New York. This is money which is going to keep us alive. We've seen in London, we've seen in Madrid, the attacks come from the suburbs into the city because it's much harder for the police to monitor the suburbs because they're much more wide open. And Manhattan is obviously the ultimate target. So this program it's essential, it's necessary. Saturday night just proved that once again.
Congressman King, obviously if we had funding from the feds, we would have those high-tech security cameras in Times Square, and so we wouldn't be guessing if some guy changing his shirt a half a block away from the car is the guy that we're looking for.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to fight for every nickel from Washington. Now, Commissioner Kelly has set up the Lower Manhattan Security Initiative. He's trying to bring it to Midtown, but we have to fight for every dollar. And there's just so many threats facing New York, whether it's port security, whether it's the subways, whether it's more training that we have to constantly be giving to the police so they can stay ahead of the terrorists, so we can have the best technology. Yet, obviously, cameras are a main component of that. But again, it's another example of New York having to fight for every dollar. And so, we could have used our own money for that if we had gotten properly reimbursed for other areas when it comes to Homeland Security. Unfortunately, I think too often the budget offices in Washington, this is true probably in both parties, they look upon this as a dollar and cents issue. They look upon it as accountants rather than realizing that the devastating impact that even one attack could have in Times Square or on the subway system or on our bridges and tunnels. And so I think it's time for them to stop looking at it strictly as a matter of dollars and cents, but looking at it from the point of view of national defense. Also, if they do want to look at it from the perspective of dollars and cents, think of the devastating impact it'll have on our economy and our revenues if a successful attack ever is again launched against Manhattan or any place in New York for that matter.
Congressman King, what can we do? You would think that President Obama would hear about, and we know that he knows about this attempted bombing in Times Square. You would think that this would give him a little bit more impetus to do something here. But what can we do if the president doesn't take any more action by giving us extra money for Homeland Security?
I would say all of us have an obligation. Obviously, citizens have the obligation to contact their member of Congress, contact their senators. And by the way, Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand also working on this issue as well. But we have to keep the political pressure on at all levels, and the people in the tri-state area should contact their Congress. Also, the media should highlight this. I think part of the problem is, Rosanna, it's human nature. A few days after this issue in Times Square is resolved, people are going to put it in the back of their heads. Like, unfortunately, too many people in Washington have put September 11th in the back of their heads. We have to keep it a front burner issue. It has to be an intense issue, which we can never let our guard down on. So I would just say keep the pressure on, and I would ask both citizens and the media to highlight it, to talk about it. We in New York know how bad it is, how terrible it could be, but yet somehow I think we're reluctant to fight as hard as we can. Thank God we have people like Commissioner Kelly, Mayor Bloomberg, who are constantly fighting. But I can tell you, being in Washington and having to fight with people from outside New York, it gets very difficult at times, and we can never let down.
Congressman Peter King, thank you so much for weighing in on this morning. Appreciate it.